getting hurt means your heart is in it, and it is worth living this life with your heart in it to get stomped on once in a while. The old perspective is a relationship is perfect if there's no fighting and you have smiles. Like, again, that's an arrangement, right? It's an arrangement. If you're saying one thing and they're saying, yes, dear.
This might be the hardest episode yet, especially if you keep yourself with your emotions in check. Because I guarantee by the end of this episode you will be questioning yourself whether emotions and vulnerability can be actually the same thing. When I sat down face to face on a Zoom call with Stacey Martino, founder of Relationship Development, I thought I was ready for deep. Then my questions hit hard on her. She cried twice. This was never my intention. And here is the thing. She is the one who built a proven methodology to prove that one can change relationship without waiting for anyone else to change it. Stacey believes that relationship is a skill, one you can learn and master. And her teaching boasts 1% divorce rate over the 6 years. Yet in this moment, her tears taught me more than any tool or stat can ever do. So if you're coming to this episode with a thought that you already know everything and that your relationship is perfect, think again. But if you ever wonder what happens when bold meet honesty, this might be something for you. My name is Nick Graz, and this is Nick Graz Show. Today with me, Stacey Martino. One thing which stick for me for a while, and even in the moment when I reach out to you to record this episode, is that I wanted to know what was the moment in your life you realized that you had to completely rethink your way of thinking about relationships, people relationships, and what was this pivotal moment?
So for me, this goes back about, 25 years now, when my husband, Paul, was walking out of our relationship. He had reached a point, just came home one night and completely blindsided me, saying, I feel like I've tried everything. Nothing can work. I feel like I'm making it worse by being here, because the bickering and the arguing and the not seeing eye to eye had just reached a certain point, and I was completely taken aback. And unlike my usual response, so I was very different version of myself back then, as I'm sure hopefully all of us are very have ascended so much more so than in our 20s. And back then my nickname was actually the Ice Princess, and it was very well deserved. So not the version of me that you get to know today, Nick, but very stern. And unlike my usual response to that, which would have been like, good, go. Like, who cares? I completely lost it. And I broke down, and I actually was weeping and crying for the first time. And even Paul didn't know, it had been 10 years since I had really shut myself down from
Wow.
feeling anything in the world. And I just totally lost it. I totally fell apart. He was like a deer in headlights, like, oh man, I am wildly unprepared for this. I didn't realize it was gonna, because I had never cried in all the years that Paul and I had known each other. Like, he had never seen me get emotional or cry. And in that time, I felt a surge of love for Paul that I honestly had never felt before, didn't know humans even felt that, and realized, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how to be in a relationship. Certainly, that was never modeled for me. None of my other relationships had ever worked out, obviously. And I'm like, whether it's for Paul or just for me, I can no longer go through life being blindsided by this kind of pain. Even when I thought I was protecting myself from getting hurt, there was no protection, and I cannot function like this. And I made a decision, like, whether it's for me or to save this relationship, I don't know. Nobody would know that, but I'm going to figure this out. And I dove in and studied everything I could get my hands on about relationship, masculine, feminine, all of the conversation tactics and everything. And most of it was for couples, which, Paul was not going to touch anything with a 10-foot pole because he didn't think there was any problem. Very young Paul, like there's nothing wrong with me. If you have an issue, go fix it, kind of a thing. Of course, now we can laugh about that. But when I dove in and started trying the things that I was reading, most of them backfired. Most of it made things worse. But luckily, I'm kind of like a reverse engineer thinker. And so I would reverse engineer why wasn't that working? And if I tried something else, the exact opposite, it was working. Why? And eventually I figured out how to put the pieces together and completely saved our relationship, which was a huge surprise to me. But even more than that, I was happier than I had ever been in all the years I had been alive, just learning how to peacefully navigate life with other people without compromising my own happiness. And I never thought that we would be teaching that years later. It was just for me and my relationship. But many years later, Paul and I felt the calling that we really need to share this with other people. And thank goodness we have, because now, as you know, we've helped, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people around the world with our method and our strategies, which are very contradictory to what everybody else has been taught for forever about relationships. And we're very blessed to do this work.
That's absolutely true because not only that I see your passion when you start speaking about that moment that you rearrange your relationship, but I also know the testimonials, the stories, and the people who were working with you, including Russell Branson, which I will touch some points later on that. But Stacey, I want to ask you something back in that situation. Was your ego that one who was the shield when you say to your husband, okay, go away, your choice, you're gonna lose? Or this was you not willing to go deep in yourself and to ask, is it because of me? Or is it because of him? Or not willing to look for the answers?
So I think for, the masculine and the feminine are such polar opposites. And what I found in working with so many people is that it's very commonly a feminine core dynamic that out of protection,
Mm,
we try to stop caring about everything, feeling everything, being connected. It's kind of like you see it in movies and TV shows, right? I wish I could be like, not care about things like you, and then it wouldn't hurt so much. Like I had been through so much heartache and so many relationship losses that I was trying to turn it off for self-preservation
mm,
and really thinking like, I was an accountant, right? I'm like, I have my career, I bought my own house, I have a dog, like I have everything. I don't need a relationship in my life. I don't need love. I'm just going to focus on my achievements and what I'm going to create.
yeah.
And I thought naively that I could just make that choice, like a logical choice, to go through life without connection and without love that way, because I was reacting to pain and no one ever taught me any skills to navigate life in any other
Basically,
way other than
basically
cut it
nobody
off.
teaches for that, right? Nobody ever teaches
Yeah.
in the way of relationship how should we behave.
Yeah.
We somehow start the relationship and go within flow. Most of the times, maybe even being driven by emotions, sometimes by logic, but somehow we are self-judged in that journey. My question to you is out of that story, is there a belief or a, let's say a belief about relationship or love which you had to unlearn in order
Yeah.
to save your marriage and to move forward?
Countless. I mean, literally countless false beliefs that I think not only me, but unfortunately most humans have
Mhm.
been conditioned by, because we come from a different time. Like you go back 50 years ago, relationships were a completely different situation than they are today. 100 years ago, 200, like you can go back. So we have been kind of handed this really old broken dynamic about relationships, like you both have to work on it. You need to compromise. Someone has to meet you halfway. And I think the biggest one for me, and what I think is for most people that end up kind of learning about this stuff from me and Paul, is the assumption that what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're doing, when we see someone else say those things, do those things, it means the same thing to them, that they're wired similarly to me. And when someone does something or says something we don't like, we label that as like, you're having bad behavior. Like, why would you say that? Why would you do that? Because if we said that, we know what it would mean. But the key thing is, all humans are actually wired very differently. And in a masculine feminine core relationship, not male female, but masculine feminine core processing relationship, the masculine and the feminine are polar opposites. And sometimes we use the same vocabulary word and actually mean two completely different
Mm.
things. And once you understand that, the perspective shift and the opening to heartfelt understanding of like, oh my God, I didn't know. That I think is the biggest thing that helps to save people from a misunderstanding taking a relationship down.
Why do you think that many people will stuck in relationships, and why traditional methods doesn't work nowadays? Is it because everything around us changed that fast and we kind of wasn't aware in that and somehow just found ourselves in new environment, or what's the real reason for that?
The biggest change was that many years ago, relationships were actually more of an arrangement. If you think about
Deals.
50 years, 100 years ago, right? You were both entering it for a reason, right? For very
Yeah,
often it was either to have children or for a woman who needed protection or a man who needed, for to have an heir or whatever those
absolutely.
cultural, religious, right? And what happened was at some point in the last 50 years, um, people became free and equal. And when
Mm.
that happened, entering into marriage became more about love and the experience of the relationship. I want to experience life with this person. I don't want to not experience life without them anymore. I want to experience the relationship. And however, the interacting, the modalities, the dynamics were passed down from an arrangement-based relationship dynamic. And now
Definitely
we're in
are.
a relationship-based relationship dynamic. And arrangement-based dynamics, like I tell you what to do and you say, okay, thank you. Like arrangement-based dynamics break down relationships, right? Even today with children, if we say, you better clean that room if you want to go on Saturday. We may have leverage. It's an arrangement over them to get them to do what we need them to do. But that moment broke down the relationship between parent and
Yeah.
child, not by bad intention. We just run to the end of our skill set. We don't know what else to do. And we're like, hey, I have this leverage. Like, if you want me to take you somewhere, you better do that. But it doesn't bring closeness. It actually builds separation. And that's what's happening unknowingly to people right now. With the best of intentions, we're repeating old patterns and it's building separation because it breaks down relationships. It was never designed for the relationship, it was designed to keep the arrangement going.
Very powerful, especially the moment when you said about creating a relationship as a sort of deal. A big part of my life I spent living in China, running two companies over there. And one of the things which was never aligning with me, but seeing it very closely through my co-workers, to people with whom I've worked and so on, is that the relationships over there are real deals. How much your family is rich, how much my family is rich, how our life gonna look like if we combine this wealth. I don't mean about any spiritual wealth, we talk about real wealth, money, and how will our life look like? And then in constant fear of showing emotions, even showing emotions to our child. One thing when I heard in China is that a colleague of mine told me, my father would never tell me, I love you. And I said, like, why it's like that? And she said to me, simply because he would look weak in the eyes of me as a child. And I said, wow, that's deeply, deeply wrong if you ask me. And I completely do not support it because I say to my wife and to my child many times that I love them, not by preaching it out, I love them. I also show them with the actions and everything. So I want to ask you now here something when people become aware of that. Is there any chance that they alone work through that transformation and improve their relationship? Or actually they need somebody to guide them and to create for them the path how to go through that change?
So here's what we have found is that uh, everything that we've created, so and created our relationship development method and the hundreds of tools that we've built to implement it, it's all skill set based. And I know this is like a hard idea to wrap our minds around today, but relationship is a skill set. The quality of your relationships right now, every one of your relationships, not just marriage, your coworkers,
Oh
your
yeah,
vendors, your clients, kids, family, it's based on your level of skill set. Just like I said before, if you run to the end of your skill set, you resort to leverage and other things that we know how to get things done, but it doesn't always feel great for each other. So it's a skill set. And once you learn that skill set, like learning French or learning all the different languages in China or all the things that we learn, it's about learning that skill set and then you have it forever. And so what Paul and I do is we help teach people that skill set. And just like I don't think I will ever be able to figure out Italian just
Mhm.
by my own in my room sitting and thinking about
I
things that
agree.
are Italian, I I think I don't know that no one else has ever figured out what I have figured out through my discovery of relationship invention of relationship development, discovery of demand relationship. It took almost 3 decades of work to do that, and we haven't seen it happen. But once you learn the skill set, like unlike therapy and counseling where you're constantly going to a third person for an answer, we're teaching you the skills so that you have it forever. You don't need to keep coming back to me for an answer. You're developing the skill set. Just like you don't need to learn Italian for 20 years, you learn it. Once you are immersed in it, you can do it, and there you go.
Stacey, you worked with people who are millionaires, multimillionaires, even billionaires. Are there differences in the problem of relationships they have created and they're able to spot?
You know, relationships, like health, are the ultimate equalizer.
Mm.
It doesn't matter how much money you have, there's no difference in the amount of work that it requires of you and the skill set that you are required to ascend if you want to be healthy. We all have the same body. And if you want to experience peace, harmony, love, and connection, you have to learn the same skill sets. Unless you want to maintain just the arrangement side of things, like you just described that you saw. And then I'm sure there are plenty of people who would sign up for the money versus cooperation arrangement of
Yes,
old. But
yes.
when it comes to real love, nope, it's an equalizer.
I fully agree with you, and I love that part of you putting it as an equal level. What is the biggest misconception people have about relationship development?
I think that people, when it comes to working on their relationship, I think the biggest misconception that they have is that it's about finding the right person.
Mm.
And that if maybe the problems we have is because I picked wrong, or we're too different, or you just come from a different kind of thing that, or you want something different, or you're an entrepreneur and I'm not, or you want to be vegan and I'm not, or you want to live in Spain and I don't. Like all of the
Yeah.
I picked wrong. I think that fantasy has been projected to us for centuries of you picked a good girl, son, like all of the stupid things that come from
Yep.
our past picking. But the truth is that love happens to you, as anyone has actually fallen in love knows. Love strikes you. Like falling in love actually happens to you. And you don't really have a choice in who you fall in love with because if you've really fallen in love, there will come a time when you wish you hadn't, because it would be
Mhm.
so much easier to walk away if you weren't hopelessly in love with that person. That's kind of how you know if it's really love for you. But then staying in love, being in love really is that skill set to grow it. And we only when we run to the end of our skill set and don't even know that relationship is a skill set and all of these things are solvable, do we start thinking, maybe I picked the wrong person. Maybe if I swapped out this person, it would be easier for me. The relationship would be better for me. But of course, second marriages, third marriages, the divorce rates are higher. The marriage lasts fewer years. People are leaving sooner. So it's not swapping out the person. It truly is extending the skill set.
I love it. And you're opening to me already three questions out of my ideal questions, which I wanted to ask you. The first one for you is, do you believe that people in a relationship can improve their relationship by giving to each other in the way to both of them eventually grow to the same or similar level, somehow simultaneously? Because I always say to my wife that I love the fact that she's able to point on some things where I have to work on. I'm able to point on
Mm.
her ways and things where she needs to work on, even though she's perfect. So, and like I believe that our relationship is becoming better by the time because we're giving to each other in order to both grow. What is your expertise working with hundreds of thousands of people?
Yeah, so from our experience, anytime there's a huge difference between being something directly impacting you. So between,
Mhm.
let's say, your husband and wife, like we're struggling right now on this budget and it affects our family. Well, we need to sit down and actually go through the process of having a win-win conversation and mapping out a strategy and doing that work together. But when it comes to the individual stuff, like the things you need to work on, um, pointing that out to someone or offering criticism or judgment or even feedback, whatever your intention is, usually the boomerang back is negative, right? Because it
Mm.
builds like caution in people. Then we feel like we're being judged by the one person who's supposed to love us unconditionally. And there are other ways to navigate those conversations. For instance, when an argument happens and we need to then outside the moment use the skill sets to navigate that conversation and we talk to our partner, then that partner might share, well, like, I didn't know where you were. And like I get really nervous when a certain amount of time goes by. I'm going to start freaking out because I didn't know where you were. And then in a loving way, you can be like, and you know what? I want to help you with that. I don't want
Mm.
you to go through life carrying around that kind of fear. I understand and I love that you love me so much that you would worry about me. And I know where that comes from for you. And I don't have that kind of fear in my life. So, how can I help you learn how to navigate life caring about something without having so much fear because you don't deserve to have that anymore? And that is a very different way to navigate a conversation with someone than, hey, I notice you're still carrying around that fear from when you were a kid. Like, that's something you could work on, right? Like, there's a difference in how somebody feels viewed and judged. Like, what are you watching me and judging me
Mm.
versus in the moment of working through something, saying to someone, which my husband has so many times in our years, saying, Stacey, I love you too much for you to carry that around. Please let me help you. And
Mm.
it has been some of the greatest ascensions of my life have come from my husband lending me his skill set when I've run to the end of mine.
That's so emotional. That's so nice what you're sharing. And thank you for sharing this. Uh,
Sure.
my question here, which rises in me, is if we enter a relationship in order to live with somebody and love them unconditionally, how do we balance then that way of somehow suggesting to them that there is a things or certain behaviors or certain paths which we can walk together in order to get better results or in order to eliminate something what maybe bother us with another person.
So, this is great because you're getting to the fundamental core of the pattern that we are still repeating that actually has been breaking down our relationships, even though we have the best of intentions, right? What a beautiful example. It's like, here, I care about our relationship, so I want to solve whatever is going on. So that we can always be getting better. I don't want to end up like those people I see around us where they can't even be in the same room anymore. That can never be us, right? These are wonderful intentions. And the skill set, the old skill set, is to want to talk it out with our partner and do what Paul and I kind of refer to as couples work. Like, let's work on this together. Truthfully, that backfires on people. And you end up, because you don't have the skill set to navigate those conversations yet, you end up in the downward spiral of now we're fighting over the topic, but now we're fighting over how we talk to each other. Now we're fighting over why can't you accept me for that? I accept you for all of this crazy crap that you bring to me. Like it devolves. And so I think another one of those myths about relationship, when you asked me in the beginning of our conversation, is that it takes two people. And everything in the method that Paul and I have created in the skills actually only takes one person to learn the skills and implement the change and create all of the transformation in the relationship. I have students that have done this work for 10 years now. I've never met their partner. I don't know what their partner's name is. I don't even know if they're married. It doesn't matter because it only takes one person. And I know that that's tough for people to accept, but the truth is, most humans already know this. They just don't want to accept it in the love romance relationship. But for instance, if you wanted to be a better parent, and maybe your kid is struggling with nighttime going to sleep, and you pick up a book from a great parenting coach and you read it, and it says, hey, instead of doing this, do that. And that night you go in and you do that with your kid. You don't actually sit down with your kid and say, hey, 3-year-old, you need to read this book because your behavior stinks, kiddo, right? You don't actually do that. And you don't sit down with your kid and you're like, hey, you've not been doing a great job. So this is what I need from you. You read the book, it says, do this and not that. You do this and not that. It works, right? You try something different with your kid, you get a different response from them. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this book works. What do you have to say next? I'll do that more. Every time we change what we put in, we change what we get back, right? Relationship with any long-term relationship is like a closed loop. You put something into the loop, you get a boomerang back. You change what you put in, you change the boomerang that comes back. It only takes one person.
Stacey, there is one thing which I'm now thinking of, and this is that I believe that my relationship with my wife has been, in the terms of love, have been changing its own way of love. At the very beginning was a lot of about attraction, then by the time was a lot of about understanding. I love how this person thinks, I like how this person feels, and I love their dreams and so on. And now I would say it's on some level where I simply love spending time with her, working with her, being with her in any moment of our life during the day. And I would say that our relationship in the love terms was changing that shape. How do people in global feel about that? And is there anything what you kind of break down into the phases of how this love changes by the time?
Yeah, so what you're describing is really a maturity of love. And it absolutely does change. And it's so interesting because we use the same word love to describe all those phases.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing change is actually not the love, because the love happened in the moment that it happened, and it's still love. But what's changing is your relationship experience. That's what's changing. Like in the beginning, when we don't know each other as well, the relationship experience is a lot of infatuation, a lot of curiosity, a lot of spark. And then as we experience, usually as we experience some tough times with a person, that experience of the relationship deepens, and we're like, wow, I admire this person. Wow, thank God they were there when that happened. Wow, like, you're my sunshine. You picked me back up, or I treasure that time. And what's happening is your experience, human to human, is deepening through those times. So we use the word love as a label to describe all of those, but it's really not that the love is changing. which is the feeling, but what's happening is our experience human to human is changing. And it'll change every time you go through phases, right? People go through phases with young children. That's one love phase. Your children grow. Like that's another life phase. Like as you go through life phases and your relationship changes, it's the experience of the two humans. And what most people experiences over time actually is not the evolution, right? It's the devolution. It's the devolving because they have things that build up between them that remain unsolved. When you're solving those, you have this evolution, this wonderful evolvement of the experience of the relationship through time. And that's what you're describing. It's really awesome.
Is this relationship development or how this look if it's not?
Say that again.
Is that exact relationship development
Ah,
the way how we correlate with our partner during different phases of our mutual life?
no, well, for us, relationship development is the skill set that you use when you interact with another human in a way that the boomerang that comes back actually builds up the relationship between the two people instead of breaking down the relationship between the two people. Like showing up in a moment with heartfelt understanding instead of disappointment and criticism, or showing up to create a win-win where we can both be happy instead of trying to convince someone to see it your way. Like the opposite is what Paul and I label as demand relationship, which is either trying to convince or please someone else, where there's kind of feels like there's one winner and one loser in a moment. And relationship development is a skill set that when you apply that instead, not only do you navigate that moment peacefully and harmoniously, but at the end of it, the relationship has been built up instead of taking a hit and breaking down.
Hey, you. This isn't for you if you want to get just better at sales. This is for people who want to truly dominate it. Either it's DMs, calls, webinars, keynote speaking presentations, or any other form, Instagram or Facebook stories as well. The game has changed. AI, it's just around the corner. So if you're relying on all sales scripts, old sales pitches, or if you're relying to learn sales from the old books written even 2 or 3 years ago, to not even speak about 10 or 20 or 30 years ago bestsellers, you're losing the game. Your sales will not perform on the best way. See, this is why I created this community. To give you unfair sales advantage in every format, every tool, for every buyer. Cold DMs, sales calls, sales pitches, understanding the sales pitches, breaking down sales objection, and everything else what you need to understand when it comes to different tonalities and sales psychology so that you understand how to better perform your sales. This isn't another Slack, WhatsApp, or Telegram group. This is a community of people who want to become not just better at sales, sales dominators. It's free, and you can join it just by clicking the link below in the description of this video. Interesting point. So out of your experience, is it saying that relationships are harder and harder to keep them by their longevity, or they're harder to keep them at the very beginning stages?
So, oh man. I think I'm going to go with option C, which is both. I will say that two things. Such a phenomenal point of conversation, Nick. Two things. One, the absolute hardest phase to survive in relationship, and my expertise of my experience, is the uncommitted dating phase of relationship. It's the number one, even more than post infidelity, coming back from divorce, believe it or not. Uncommitted dating phase is the hardest one to navigate successfully in my experience because there's very little, traction, skin in the game that you need to overcome. And people are quick to say, this isn't the right person, or this is too hard for me, or I don't like this about this, I'm out of here. And so it's very difficult to navigate those to the end successfully. But every long-term relationship with the same person, short-term relationships, really not that tough, but long-term relationships right now are very difficult for people, marriage being the number one toughest one you'll ever experience in your life. Because when we don't have skills that work in today's world, when we bring old patterns that we've learned from our folks, teachers, friends, workplace, oh my gosh, workplace, everywhere that kind of leverage over skills are used, and tactics, I should say, when we bring that into our relationships today, we start to have these breakdowns. Paul and I refer to it as like putting another brick in the wall between me and the other person. When something remains unsolved, right? Maybe you decide not to fight about it anymore, but a brick still goes in the wall, right? Because that person's feeling like I'm not being heard, I'm not being seen, or there's an argument and somebody brings something back from a long time ago. They're like, you're still holding on to that. That was like 10 years ago. But like, there's an unsolved pain or resentment or disappointment, and a brick goes in the wall. And what happens in a long-term relationship is over time, those bricks rise to become eye level. And that's when
Mm.
people have the experience of relationship where they look over and they're like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't know if I love you. I certainly question whether you love me. And it's not because the love fades. The love is just trapped under the weight of the bricks. The love
Mm.
never faded. But what happens is everything that person says or does is filtered through or flavored by the pain in the bricks in the wall. And what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is those bricks lighting up, not the other person. And that's unfortunately when a lot of people start to give up or question if they're with the right person. But the truth is, if you start a new relationship, the bricks start going back in, which is why second, third, fourth marriages, the divorce rates are higher and people get out of it quicker because those bricks, like, I know what that is, bricks going in the wall.
Yeah,
And
we're kind
so
of familiar.
that's why long-term relationships are also so much more difficult to navigate without the skills to do it.
Very powerful, interesting point, and I love it. Recently heard from Leila Hormozi that in the moment when she started communicating her relationship with Alex, her husband, once a week they sit down and communicate everything they dislike and like in their relationship. It improved the way how they feel through each other, it improved the way how they function. And I want to hear your perspective on that. This is very fewer couple who are able to do it or are practicing something like that. At least I know. So I would like to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, typically that backfires and it breaks down the relationship. And with in most situations, it's it comes out like criticism and judgment,
Mm.
and most people do not respond well to that. In this case, like you talk about Layla and Alex, you've got two people who are in business together,
Yeah,
run companies together,
very
do
similar.
personal growth together, and work on their ideology together. And so they can sit down as a growth exercise. They're both growth people. And Layla is a great operations person, right? So she leads the way in that. And just like she would do a weekly issues list with any of their companies, she's like, well, let's bring that skill set to our relationship. What's the issues list? And I actually find that those things can be very productive because, and I tell people, like, if we brought systems and processes to our household like we do to our business, our households would be a lot less stressful. I'm all for systems and processes. And if that process has worked in business and the person you're talking to absolutely has a positive experience of, I love Issues List Friday because we get so much done in 1 hour and then that stuff gets implemented, then you can bring something like that as a tool to your relationship because that person already knows, like, I know what this is. This is a positive thing. It's not a personal criticism of me. We're just going to apply that system to our household, to our relationship, to each other, because we're already doing that. And in that case, I think what's happening is a tool that's working elsewhere is being brought into the relationship
Mm.
topic. And we're just changing topic because those two people have done that a
Yeah.
million times in all of their businesses. But for most people who haven't done that, it's disastrous.
Yeah, looking at past at my father and mother relationship, I can't imagine them doing that. This would be like a lot of drama and a lot of ego pulling on the table.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
fully agree with your perspective, and I wanted to hear. I was guessing somewhere that it would go that way. Um, you teach people that they should stop trying really to change their partner. Why this is so crucial?
So, well, fundamentally on principle, you can't control anyone outside of yourself. I think it's hard for us to accept because we grew up where parents were telling us, don't do that. Go hug your Aunt Kathy.
It's kind of
Turn in that
restrictive.
paper. Yeah. So we have been told our whole lives what to do by other people. So when we become finally adults, we're like, I'm going to tell everybody what I want them to do. And it's such a normal occurrence for people. But the truth is, in an equal world, you can't control other people outside of yourself. And most humans do not enter into relationship to be controlled or dominated by another person.
Mm,
They get into that relationship to they came to this earth with their own dream, with their own purpose, with their own goal of who they're going to become. And it's not to serve life up to you on a silver platter. So not only does it not work because you can't control other people, but the truth is, if you have become somebody, if the version of yourself that you are needs person A and B and C to do things a certain way for you, like change that, don't use that tone of voice with me, then what happens is, Paul and I call that the leash around your neck. Your trigger is that tone of voice. It's the leash around your neck. And you are trying to convince your partner, do not use that tone with me. I do not like that tone. But what about each of your kids? What about your folks? What about your neighbor?
yeah.
What about your boss? What about your coworker? What about the lady at the pharmacy? Like when you refuse to solve your triggers and instead try to get everybody outside of you to change, what you're doing is you're protecting the leash around your neck. You're protecting the trigger. Why am I keeping the trigger and trying to take a free will away from other people when anybody can grab that leash around my neck and drag me around by my trigger because I haven't solved it? And so instead of trying to tell other people, please change that, please don't do that, we heal and actually solve. There's actually a process for solving triggers. We devoted quite a bit of time to it in our book, The Missing Piece. We teach it in our events and our programs. Like everyone deserves to go through this process of learning how to actually solve these things so they no longer bother us, so that we can bring ourselves peacefully to our relationships. And then we can work on co-creating together things that work for both people. Because as I often say, we're a family of four here, not a family of one. And it's
Mm.
not about everything changing to meet one person. Part of the richness of life and the biggest struggle is, how do we do this with four people who are wired differently, who all have value, and be able to do things cohesively and peacefully? And that's the skill set that we need to learn.
I'm so curious now to ask you something about your personal relationship because entire your coaching starts from your personal relationship and that change. And I must ask you for the very beginning, is there a moment in your marriage where you almost gave up, where you said, that's not possible to be fixed?
No,
Yeah, that's very
no.
powerful.
When we had our, our night, our hanging by a thread moment when Paul was leaving, I doubted that I could do anything to fix it. But I
Mhm.
was doubting my level of ability. I wasn't saying there's something in our relationship that's so bad that it couldn't be fixed. Um, no, there's nothing.
That's so
No.
powerful. It means that you have such a strong belief that you can do that, and you proved that you can do that. Do you think that people are having false belief in the moment when they feel like, okay, I can't do that. I cannot change it. I need to give up.
Yeah. I I will just say, Nick, I think it's uh gosh, it's one of the things that brings me probably the most pain is knowing that every single day there are millions of families every day that are breaking up because of a false belief that something wasn't solvable, when not only is it potentially solvable, we've solved it hundreds of times for people already. For over 14 years, it's provenly solvable, but they just don't know it yet. And there are kids in those homes that are going to have to learn how to navigate life, bouncing from one house to another, and they're resilient. Everybody will be okay. But yeah, that sucks. It sucks.
Absolutely. And I can just put myself in a second in this sort of environment just to imagine it. And yeah, it's something what I also don't wish any child to experience as well as their parents, because it's such a stressful thing. Uh, what's the most difficult truth you had to accept about yourself as a partner?
About myself, I think is that I needed a long time ago. I think that the hardest thing for me was to accept that there is no way for me to preemptively predict and protect myself from everything. It's just it's just not possible. I grew up as a young person feeling helpless in a lot of situations. And so when I became an adult, like my go-to move was to try to forward pace myself and think through what are all the things I can do to prevent any like even in my job, right? Prevent this account from going bad, or prevent oh, this was a problem. How can I rework that before the partner finds out, my boss finds out? Like, what else can I do? How can I protect my dog? How can I make sure this house deal? Like, I was really, and of course, suffering from that kind of stress that I was bringing to myself. I was trying to prevent and predict myself from experiencing the ups and downs of life, feeling like I didn't know how to navigate them. And I think the hardest thing for me to face was um, thinking about letting go of that. And the way I actually ended up solving it was I became skilled, right? I became the version of myself who actually learns how do I navigate that? Okay, if that were to happen, I know how to navigate that situation. So I don't have to try to prevent or predict it. If this happens, if the worst thing happens, yes, it will be difficult, but I will survive. It's fine. I know how to navigate those things. And once I learned that, I no longer needed to hold on to that, but that was one of the hardest things. I was so fearful. It was so hard to let go of trying to predict and control things so that I wouldn't. And then, of course, as a parent, so that my dog would not feel that, my son, our daughter, like I didn't want anyone. Now it's spreading. My web of needing to control is spreading to my kid and the kid on the bus who's being mean to them. Like learning how to let that go, and be able to be confident and calm as I walk through my day, that was one of the toughest things I've ever had to face.
Stacey, you're bringing here such a golden nuggets about relationship, and I'm so happy to be a part of this episode, because I want to ask you, for you personally, was there a moment where you feel, okay, it's my own teaching, but it's so hard to do it. It's so hard to follow those steps.
Oh gosh, I think Nick, I think that the toughest times for me are actually leading this organization.
Mhm.
Doing this mission that Paul and I do, where we're trying to help every single person who wants to learn these skills, that's one thing. The craft, like I do that all day. I'm so happy. I love our students. I love doing it. But it required us to build this organization because we need a
Yeah.
team to do that. We need all of these things. And that was not my world. And I feel like everything, right? Like our mentor, Russell Brunson, everything that I'm asked to do is kind of like a new frontier for us. And we have this beautiful growth, and we're so blessed to steward this organization and grow. But every time I get stretched for, you're going to have to navigate this. You're going to like, we just started doing media for interviews
Mhm.
for the book that we just published with Hay House in February. I'm like, so now like NBC and ABC, like, and TV and radio. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is so not my skill set. And it's but like, that's where the skills of you need to face it and own it and solve it so you get to move on, right? That's one of our skills that we work on. And facing those things and then saying, okay, I can't make anyone else do this. I have to take ownership of it and solve it so that I get to move on. Like doing the things that are uncomfortable is not easy to do. And I think that relationship development organization is my opportunity for growth at all times. We're constantly being stretched here, and I find it difficult at times
Well,
for
following
sure.
your work and looking what you're doing amazing. And this is
Oh, you're
really for
sweet.
respect to see all that leadership and ownership you're taking actions. And you're in contact with so many people with different religions, different parts of the world, with different growing up patterns, or call it however, rules.
Yeah.
Uh, Give me in global opinion, has modern society made it easier to sustain deep, committed relationship or harder?
Yeah. Well, I think that in one way, it's the easiest it's ever been because most of us, hopefully, my prayer is that most of us worldwide know that we are or can be free. And so, in that way, if you look 50 years ago or more, many people were not
Yeah.
free and empowered for themselves. And it's almost impossible to have a real relationship when you feel like I can only say so much here because I'm not free to open my mouth or speak. I could be risking a lot for myself and now my children. So, in that way, because even someone who doesn't feel free beautifully through our ways of communication today gets to see freedom. Be like, you know
Mhm.
what? If she can be free, so can I. If he can be free, so can I. And hopefully we'll seek freedom because we can't actually have a real relationship unless we have freedom and empowerment. And then so in that way it's easier than ever. And today's world is the fastest paced and most difficult to manage, especially for parents, right? Because if you think again, 50 years ago or more, one parent usually had the role of taking care of the house and the children, and one parent had the role of working to create an income. That no longer exists. We both do everything.
Yeah.
And yet, no one ever gave us any more skills or any more help to go along with the intensity of everybody having work, and work wants more from us than ever before. It
Mhm.
slides into a 24/7, 7 day a week. We actually care about our children so much. We focus on them now. And like how there's just not enough minutes in a day to create the the craft and the work, the parenting, the marriage, the self that we want, when we haven't gotten any more updated systems, processes, or procedures for how to do that versus the divide and conquer approach of years ago. And that's why I say things like, look, if we actually took a little bit more of a traction or a systems approach to our households as we do to our companies, then we can have more systems, processes, and procedures supporting us to have the lives we want. It's very difficult for people to manage life today without that. And instead of recognizing, again, false belief, instead of recognizing, hey, we don't actually have systems and processes in place that can support us, we blame ourselves. We're like, I'm not being a good mother. Clearly, I'm not doing a good enough job as a wife. Clearly, I'm not like, it's so terrible that we go to blaming ourselves first instead of seeing things accurately. But so in those ways, it's the hardest it's ever been.
Yeah, that's very interesting point of view, and thank you for explaining that. What impact social media and digital distractions have made on emotional connection with people?
Well, I actually think that it's a vehicle, right? Like social media and digital access is a vehicle, just like shopping is a vehicle, eating is a vehicle, working out is a vehicle, your work is a vehicle. And all vehicles can be used for positive or negative. It's in the hands of the user, right? I can use shopping for the positive to set up all my auto ships as a system
Yeah.
for my households and make my life easier. Or I can use shopping as an escape and obsess about it because it gives me a thrill that I'm not getting elsewhere in my life, right? And so it can be the same with social media. There has been so much empowerment, freedom, connection, celebration that has come from this beautiful world of visibility that we have created and we get to live in. And by the same token, the user can use it negatively, which is to self-judge themselves, to put things that are lies into play, making it look like it's the truth, like to lose themselves into a phone for connection instead of human connection because they don't have that skill set. So I think people give screens and digital stuff a really bad rap because they'd much rather blame the vehicle than blame the user or take ownership
Oh,
for
yeah,
their usage. And they
absolutely.
don't know necessarily how to teach their children how to be a user because it wasn't part of our history. But it's really, don't blame the game, right? It's
Yeah,
not the vehicle, it's the user.
absolutely. Uh, Stacey, I have some questions in the transformational way for you. And this is there a belief, one belief, when we adopt it that immediately can change the dynamic of any relationship?
Everything is solvable.
Yeah,
If you really believe that, you would do something different in the next moment. That's the belief.
that's very powerful. Most of the times we just kind of forgot that one somewhere down the road and we said like, no, that's not possible to be changed. He's not possible to be changed. She's not possible to be changed. It's actually very, very powerful. Tell me, what emotional safety actually mean and how do we create it?
I have no idea. I've never heard that term. I have no idea what somebody would be talking about
Mhm.
um, when they say emotional safety. I don't know.
They usually think to not be hurted during the relationship,
Mm,
to to to
say it
to
again.
to partner to not hurt them, to they be kind of
Oh,
self-protective.
oh, yeah. There's no option on Earth. Earth doesn't offer that option here. I've looked into it extensively. It's not offered. Emotional pain is a part of the life experience. Whether it's in your business, right? We've just talked about it, Nick. I know you know this. Whether it's in your business, with client, with growth, with team, in your marriage, in your family, with your kids, getting hurt means your heart is in it, and it is worth living this life with your heart in it to get stomped on once in a while. I will say, because we're doing a podcast here, that most people attach their own meanings to that. Word hurt could be interpreted physically. I'm not talking about physical violence.
Yeah,
Physical violence is not a relationship issue, it's a safety and violence issue, needs other solutions. But as far as emotional hurt, um, that's a part of the human experience. It's like losing someone, like someone dying that you love very much, and grieving. Grieving is your love continuing. It's worth missing them. Loving them was worth missing them. And it's worth going through hurt every once in a while as part of having your heart in it and living life. But yeah, going through life without experiencing emotional pain is not something
yeah.
that's offered here on Earth.
It doesn't shape us. And as you said
No.
that, I believe that all our life it's about learning. We are
Mm.
literally learning on every single step. Can you tell me, is there something for you and Paul what you guys are still learning in your own
Oh,
relationship?
learning, yes. I'll be learning until I take my last breath here.
Powerful.
Evolving, ascending as the person I am, who I get to be. That's the actual adventure of life. That's the whole purpose of being here, is to keep ascending the version of yourself that you are and experiencing life from that perspective, which is completely different than last year, right? Unrecognizable compared to last year or 5 years ago. So yes, we're always learning. I know people are kind of blown away when I say we have 14 years of research, development, and content here in relationship
Yeah.
development. And every year we are building more tools and figuring out more dynamics and more ways to say them in a way that the students can digest them faster, getting better results than 14 years ago. Even masculine and feminine differences, we've discovered dozens of them and we teach them, but we discovered more just this year already, and there are always more dynamics, more skill sets for having the win-win conversation. All like every time our students ask us questions, which was why Paul and I still do Q&A with our students every single month, our answers are articulating something in a way that we've not been able to explain it before because of the question and the way that they phrased it. So it's like a living, breathing organism, and we're constantly always evolving and learning every year.
I love it. I love your passion for that work. And I want to ask you, being a relationship expert like you are, and consistently meeting people who are having a problem in their relationship, do you ever feel pressure of the society in your personal life that you must be a role model of everything you teach and of, let's call it, perfect relationship?
Yeah. So that's how do I answer that? That is an old perspective. It's totally understandable and very common. But the old perspective, going back to the demand relationship paradigm, is a relationship is perfect if there's no fighting and you have smiles. Like again, that's an arrangement, right? It's an
Mm,
arrangement. If you're saying one thing and they're saying yes, dear, then you have a perfect relationship. And when people like rah, 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 you don't, right? Because you shouldn't have that kind of stuff. That's 50 years ago. So we don't really hold that perspective anymore. Having the relationship that you want today is about experiencing love that you have, experiencing that harmony, that joy, that passion, that heat, that fun, that growth, with fewer and fewer and fewer kerfuffles, upsets, disappointments, and not having things that stay unsolved for long periods of time. Um, and Paul and I have just reached a level of mastery with that we for sure have kerfuffles. Everybody does. We work together, like work together 24/7. So we're learning new things by discovering things through what? Kerfuffles. Like, what did you mean? Like, what the hell? What did you mean by that? Like, and then we learn something, but it doesn't stay. But I don't feel any the thought of people viewing me
mhm.
and like looking to see if there's something. I don't feel any of that because I'm not projecting any kind of curtain. I think and you probably know this from being around us, like Paul and I are as real as two people can be. I don't have any positioning, projecting, curtain. Like literally, that's our method, is not compromising who you really are for anyone or anything, and still being able to build up the relationships that are around you. And so that's who I really am. And I'm who I really am talking to you right now, as much as I was downstairs talking to Paul before I came up here. Like it's the same. So um, I hope people observe us, but only in the way that they see that there's a potential to be who you really are, be loved for it, and build up the relationships that you have with your children, your spouse, your family, at work, your friends, everything, and be happy as yourself. But no, I don't worry about what people are going to see or think, or also like fuck them, I don't care. Like I don't really, I'm
Very
just
good.
not like that, but I
Very
don't
good,
care.
very good perspective. Uh, for almost the last question, I want to ask you, Stacey, What is the next for you and Paul, and what is the next for relationship development? You guys recently published a book which really take off really high, and I can see comments on the social media. I can see that people are
Mhm.
checking it out, reading it. I can see that there is a lot of buzz. So what's next for you and Paul and for relationship development as a movement?
Well, right now we are so excited because we're giving our book away for free, which like just is
Wow.
like the manifestation of the mission of this organization is to get these solutions into as many hands as possible. So at missingpiecebook.com, we're giving the book away. And in doing that, we've been able to, and this has been like a 3-year project in the making for us, be ready to handle that scale by offering our event almost pretty much every month so that it's there when people need it. It used to be once a year because it takes so much to put on that event. We have one event that we're now doing almost every month. And in relationship development, we're preparing for volume, which we have never ever experienced or seen before. Now, with so many readers coming in, and our organization has been rebuilding itself for the last 3 years to prepare for this. And so now we do 22 events a year,
Wow.
in addition to our Relationship U program, where we serve our students 365 days a year, 24/7, in addition to making sure that we get the book out to as many humans around the globe as want these answers. So that's our focus for this year.
That's very powerful, and I hope that this podcast will also drive more people towards you and towards your book. And for the very last, I want to ask a question which I ask everybody who was here. This season, it's called Inside Out. I'm consistently looking for what is something what must be inside of a person so that once emitted, exploded in outer world, lead towards success. In this case, towards successful relationship. What is for you, Stacey, Inside Out?
For sure, it's the skills. I know I probably said it too many times already, but when we have the skills ourselves, then we can bring that skill set, right? As a leader, I'm a leader for my children. I'm a leader for my marriage. I'm a leader for my team and my organization, for all of our students, for my friends. Like when you bring that to outside world, every time and you already know this, right? It works the same way as mindset. It's direct proportion. When you up level your mindset, your outer world up levels. When you up level your skill set, whether it's your digital marketing skill set, your sales conversion skill set, your relationship skill set, your language skill set, when you up level that, you bring yourself to the outside world and your outside world changes. It's very much like Dr. Wayne Dyer's quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's because you're shifting your perspective, your lenses, your vision. Like I said before, when we learn how someone is wired, right? Like the masculine is an autonomous processor. They process usually in silence, autonomously. The feminine is an external communal processor. They process verbally, externally, usually, and with other people. And when we don't know that, the feminine can be feeling emotionally hurt because he's so quiet. He's not including me. He doesn't let me in. I hear these things all the time, right? Or the masculine can be like, "Where are you going with this? What's the point of this? You changed topic like 4 times." My husband used to say to me a million years ago, "Don't drag me all around. Like, what do you get to the point?" Like, and then when we learn these things, we're like, oh my God, I didn't know.
It's
I
a new
didn't know.
world.
Okay, so how do I do this? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, and it's no longer painful or frustrating, it's endearing. It brings curiosity. I'm living in wonder. Who is this creature I'm interacting with? And so when we change our inner world, the outer world changes. And I feel like mindset, skill set, those things go together.
Thank you so much, Stacey. This was very, very powerful episode. I really appreciate your time and you being here today with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it, Nick.
Thank you. Made it till the end of this episode with Stacey Martino. You might felt something, right? Not just heard it. felt it. Because this wasn't about strategy. This was about soul. About what happens behind the scenes. When love gets hard, when wounds get deeper, and when most of the people log out. But Stacey, she doesn't flinch. She leans in. She reminds us that relationships aren't built by chance. They're built by choice. Choice which you or me have made. And if something cracked in you today, let it. Don't just patch it. Don't scroll away. Sit with the question. Where have I been withholding love? Because I have been waiting to feel safe first. If that hits you, good. That means it's time. So hit the subscribe button. Not because of me. For the part of you which still believes that love is worthy of fighting for it. And if this episode brought you in tears and emotionally touched you, share it with someone. Text it to someone. Because healing doesn't happen alone. It happens together. This is Nick Graz Show. My name is Nick Graz, and I will see you in the next episode.